The chamber of the galactic confluence stretched vast and gleaming, its walls made of crystallized light that shifted through colors no human eye should have been able to see. 12 pedestals rose from the floor, each holding a representative from the most powerful species in this sector of space. They had ruled here for over 3,000 years, unchallenged and absolute. Ambassador David Chen stood at the center of the chamber, a small figure in a simple dark suit. Around him, the aliens towered or floated or coiled depending on their biology. Some looked at him with multiple eyes. Others sensed him through methods humans still didn't fully understand. But all of them shared one thing in common. They did not take him seriously. The Human Confederation formally protests the presence of your military fleet in our territory, Chen said, his voice steady and clear. We demand immediate withdrawal from the New Harmony system. This is not a negotiation. This is a warning. A sound rippled through the chamber. It took Chen a moment to recognize it as laughter. The confluence species didn't laugh the same way humans did, but the meaning was unmistakable. They found him amusing. Senior Arbiter Kelvoth rose from his pedestal. He was tall, nearly 3 meters, with silver skin that reflected the chamber's shifting light. His species, the Varen, had led the confluence for 800 years. They were brilliant strategists, master engineers, and completely convinced of their superiority. Ambassador Chen, Kelvoth said, his voice like wind through metal chimes. Your species has been in space for what? 200 years? We have maintained peace in this sector for millennia. New Harmony sits on resources that would benefit the entire galactic community. Your small colony has no rightful claim to an entire system. We settled it first, Chen replied. Under galactic law, that grants us territorial rights. You taught us that law. Now you want to ignore it. Another representative spoke up. This one was a Thracian, a being that looked like flowing water held in a vaguely humanoid shape. Your colony has fewer than 5 million inhabitants. Our civilizations number in the trillions. Surely you see the arithmetic, human. The needs of the many outweigh the desires of the few. Chen's jaw tightened. He had expected this. For the past 6 months, the confluence had been making these arguments, slowly escalating their pressure. First it was requests, then suggestions, then demands. Now they had moved a fleet of 300 warships to the edge of human space. We see the arithmetic perfectly, Chen said. 300 ships against 20 human vessels currently in the New Harmony system. You think those numbers mean you've already won, but numbers aren't everything. No, Kelvoth agreed, sounding almost kind. They are not. Technology matters. Experience matters. And in both areas, humanity is severely lacking. Your ships are crude. Your weapons are basic. Your tactics are... He paused as if searching for a polite word. Untested on a galactic scale. We've been peaceful, Chen said. For 180 years, humanity has traded fairly, honored every treaty, and resolved disputes through diplomacy. We've been good neighbors. That doesn't mean we're helpless. A representative that looked like a collection of floating crystals chimed in. We have reviewed your military capacity, Ambassador. Your entire fleet numbers perhaps 800 vessels, scattered across dozens of systems. Even if you recalled every ship, you would be outnumbered. Our combined forces exceed 40,000 ships. Chen looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as he could. Then why do you need 300 ships to take one system from us? If we're so weak, why not send 10 ships? 5, why show such force? The question hung in the air. For a moment, none of the confluence representatives responded. Then Kelvoth spoke again, and this time his voice was harder. We show force to avoid bloodshed, Ambassador. We want your people to understand the futility of resistance. Surrender New Harmony peacefully. Relocate your colonists, and no one needs to die. Refuse, and the responsibility for what follows rests on human shoulders. Chen reached into his jacket and pulled out a small data chip. He placed it on the floor in the center of the chamber. Light immediately scanned it, and the data uploaded to the confluence records. That contains every communication between our governments over the past 6 months, Chen said. Every request we made for dialogue. Every compromise we offered. Every attempt we made to find a peaceful solution. You rejected them all. You insisted that New Harmony must be surrendered, with no compensation, no negotiation, nothing. Because it is the logical solution, the Thracian said. Emotion clouds your judgment, human. This is simple resource allocation. Then let me make our position equally simple, Chen said. His voice dropped, losing the diplomatic polish. Now he sounded like what he had been before becoming an ambassador, a naval officer who had seen combat. Withdraw your fleet from our territory. Do not enter the New Harmony system. Do not threaten our people. If you do, we will defend what is ours. There will be no second warning. There will be no further negotiations. There will be consequences. The laughter returned louder this time. Even Kelvoth's serious demeanor cracked slightly. Consequences, the Varen leader said. Ambassador, please. We are trying to avoid a massacre. Your 20 ships against our 300? It would be over in minutes. And if by some miracle you damaged our fleet, we have thousands more. What consequence could you possibly impose on us? Chen picked up his data chip. He looked tired suddenly, much older than his 50 years. My government instructed me to make this warning, to give you every chance to avoid what comes next. I've done that. The rest is up to you. He turned to leave, but Kelvoth's voice stopped him. Ambassador Chen. One moment. The Varen leader descended from his pedestal, towering over the human. I want you to understand something. This isn't personal. This isn't hatred. This is simply the way galactic civilization works. The strong make decisions that benefit the majority. The weak accept these decisions. It has always been this way. Chen looked up at him. Has it? In all your thousands of years, has no weak species ever surprised you? Has no underestimated opponent ever made you regret your certainty? Not in my lifetime, Kelvoth said. And I am 400 years old. Then maybe, Chen said quietly, you're due for a new experience. He left the chamber, walking through corridors of light and matter that hurt to look at too long. His shuttle was waiting outside the Confluence station, a small human vessel that looked primitive compared to the sleek ships docked around it. His pilot, Lieutenant Morrison, stood at attention as he approached. How did it go, sir? Morrison asked. Exactly as expected, Chen said. They're going to ignore the warning. Take us home, Lieutenant. We need to prepare. As the shuttle departed, neither man spoke. Chen stared out the viewport at the massive Confluence station shrinking behind them. In the distance, he could see the shapes of warships gathering. 300 vessels, each one larger and more advanced than anything humanity had built. The odds were impossible. But humans had faced impossible odds before. The shuttle jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving the Confluence behind. Chen opened a secure communication channel to Earth. The transmission would take 3 days to arrive, but it needed to be sent immediately. Ambassador Chen to Earth Command, he said into the recorder. The warning has been delivered and rejected. The Confluence will move on New Harmony within the week. Recommend immediate implementation of Protocol Thorn. Authorization code, Chen 77 Delta Alpha. He stopped the recording and closed his eyes. Protocol Thorn. They had hoped it would never come to this. For nearly 2 centuries, humanity had worked to avoid galactic conflict. They had swallowed insults, accepted unfavorable trades, and taken the long path around disputes. Not because they were cowards, but because they remembered. Humans remembered their own history. The wars that had nearly destroyed Earth. The weapons that could crack continents. The bioengineered plagues. The orbital strikes. The nuclear fire. Humanity had climbed out of its own ashes twice, and the lessons had been burned into their collective memory. Never again. Never let it get that bad again. Find another way. But there was a second lesson, one that the Confluence didn't understand. When humans said never again, it meant 2 things. Never again would they destroy themselves, and never again would they let themselves be destroyed by others. The shuttle arrived at New Harmony 4 days later. The colony world was beautiful, a perfect mix of Earth-like continents and alien ecosystems. 5 million people had built lives here over 3 generations. They had farms and cities, universities and factories. They had children who had never seen Earth but called themselves human with pride. Now orbital platforms were being loaded with escape pods. Parks were being converted to temporary shelters. Every civilian ship in the system was being prepared for evacuation. Governor Sarah Park met Chen at the spaceport. She was young for a planetary governor, only 40 with gray already streaking through her black hair. The stress of the past months had aged her. They're really coming, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Chen confirmed. You have perhaps 5 days. 6 at most. And Earth? The fleet? Coming, Chen said. But they won't arrive in time to save the colony. Only to avenge it. Park's face hardened. Then we evacuate. Every person. Every animal we can carry. Every data file, every genetic sample, every piece of art and history. If they want New Harmony, they'll get dirt and empty buildings. Not quite empty, Chen said quietly. Park looked at him sharply. You don't mean protocol, Thorne, Chen confirmed. This is our home. If they take it, they'll pay for every meter. Within hours, the evacuation began in earnest. Ships launched around the clock, each one packed with people and whatever they could carry. Families said goodbye to homes they had built with their own hands. Farmers left fields ready for harvest. Children left schools mid-semester. But no one complained. No one refused. This was humanity's strength, forged in centuries of disaster. When survival demanded it, humans could abandon anything except each other. In orbit, the 20 human warships of the New Harmony Defense Fleet held their position. They were small ships, frigates and destroyers, with a single light cruiser as the flagship. Against 300 confluence vessels, they had no chance. But that wasn't the point anymore. Captain Elizabeth Worth commanded the cruiser Defiant. She was 55, a veteran of the Belt Wars and the Martian Uprising. She had killed before and would kill again. But she had never run from a fight. Her crew was entirely volunteer. Every person on those 20 ships had chosen to stay. They had given up their places on evacuation vessels to save civilians. They knew what was coming. How long until the Confluence fleet arrives? Worth asked her tactical officer. 3 days, Captain. Maybe less if they push their drives. Good, Worth said. That gives us 3 days to make them regret every light year they traveled to get here. On the planet below, Governor Park supervised the final preparations. In the colony's deepest mine shafts, engineering teams were installing devices that had been smuggled in over the past month. Fusion charges, antimatter bombs, seismic triggers, enough to crack the planet's crust like an egg. Are we really doing this? One of the engineers asked. He was young, barely 20. Destroying our own world? It's not our world anymore, Park said. The moment they decided to take it, it became a weapon, and we decide how that weapon is used. Back on Earth, the Human Confederation's military command was in chaos. Admiral James Zhao stared at the tactical display showing their fleet positions. 800 ships total, and none of them closer than 2 weeks from New Harmony at maximum speed. We can't get there in time, his second-in-command said. The colony will fall before we arrive. Then we make sure it falls on our terms, Zhao replied. He activated the fleet-wide communication system. All commands, this is Admiral Zhao. Execute protocol, Thorne, full authorization. New Harmony is lost, but this war hasn't even started yet. Across human space, ships received their orders. Fleets began moving not toward New Harmony but toward Confluence territory. Covert teams that had been positioned for months activated. Resources were redirected. Treaties with non-confluence species were quietly renegotiated. Humanity was going to war. On the edge of the New Harmony system, sensors detected the approaching Confluence Armada. 300 ships advancing in perfect formation. They were beautiful in a terrible way, each one a masterpiece of engineering. They represented thousands of years of advancement, the pinnacle of galactic military power. Captain Worth watched them on her display. Her ship's AI calculated firing solutions, engagement patterns, survival probability. The number for survival was 0.03%, effectively impossible. All ships, she transmitted to her small fleet. Remember why we're here. Remember who we're protecting. And remember that we tried to warn them. Whatever happens next, history will know we tried. The Confluence fleet crossed into human territory. Admiral Kelthor, son of Senior Arbiter Kelvoth, commanded the Armada. He expected a quick campaign. A brief show of force, a token resistance, and then human surrender. His father had promised this would be bloodless if done correctly. Then his sensors detected the 20 human ships moving to intercept. They're actually going to fight, his tactical officer said, sounding surprised. Bravery without wisdom is just suicide, Kelthor replied. Target their command ship. Single precision strike. Let's make this quick. The distance closed. In the cold mathematics of space warfare, the outcome was already decided. But mathematics didn't account for one thing. Humans had nothing left to lose. Captain Worth looked at her crew. They were ready. They were scared, but ready. All ships, she said. For New Harmony. For humanity. No pardons, no mercy. No retreat. The Defiant's engines flared to maximum as it charged directly at the Confluence formation. Behind it, 19 other ships followed. The battle was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you ignored a human warning. Admiral Kelthor watched the human ships approach on his tactical display with something close to sadness. They were small vessels, barely worth calling warships by Confluence standards. His flagship alone massed more than all 20 human ships combined. This wasn't going to be a battle. It was going to be an execution. "Sir, the humans are not responding to our hails," his communications officer reported. "They've made their choice," Kelthor said. He was young for a Varan admiral, only 70 years old, but he had studied warfare his entire life. "Target their lead vessel. Fire a warning shot across their bow. Perhaps they'll see reason at the last moment." The Confluence flagship's primary weapon charged and fired. A beam of concentrated energy lanced across space, passing within 100 meters of the human cruiser Defiant. It was a demonstration of accuracy and power. The message was clear: we can destroy you anytime we choose. The human ships didn't slow down. They didn't change course. They accelerated. "Strange," Kelthor's tactical officer muttered. "Their formation is all wrong. They're not even trying to use standard defensive patterns." "Because they don't know how," another officer said. "Humans are new to void combat. They're probably panicking." But Kelthor wasn't so sure. There was something deliberate about the human approach. They were spreading out now, each ship taking a different vector. Not random, he realized. They were positioning themselves to maximize something. "But what?" "All ships weapons free," Kelthor ordered. "Disable their vessels. Precision strikes only. I want to minimize casualties." The Confluence fleet opened fire. Energy weapons and kinetic rounds crossed the void. The first human destroyer took a direct hit and exploded in a flash of light and debris. Then a second. Then a third. The human ships kept coming. "They're not stopping," the tactical officer said, his voice rising slightly. "Sir, they're not even trying to evade. They're just coming straight at us." The fourth human ship died, then the fifth. They were being slaughtered, just as predicted. But they had closed the distance now. They were almost in optimal firing range for their smaller weapons. The Defiant was in the lead, its hull already scarred from near misses. Captain Worth's voice crackled across all frequencies, speaking not to the Confluence but to her own fleet. "All ships, execute pattern broken arrow. For everyone we couldn't save. For everyone we left behind. Make it count." The remaining human ships suddenly changed tactics. Instead of spreading out further, they collapsed inward, forming a tight sphere. Then they opened fire all at once, concentrating their weapons on a single point in the Confluence formation. "Clever," Kelthor admitted. "They're trying to overwhelm our shields through focused fire. It won't work, but it's clever." Except it did work. The targeted Confluence cruiser's shields flickered and failed under the concentrated assault. Kinetic rounds punched through its hull. Secondary explosions rippled across its surface. The ship listed, dead in space. "How did they—" the tactical officer began. "They found our shield frequency," Kelthor said, understanding dawning. "That's why they didn't evade. They were scanning us, analyzing our defenses while we killed them. They sacrificed 5 ships just to gather data." The human formation shifted again. Now they were targeting multiple Confluence vessels. Their weapons fire coordinated with frightening precision. Another Confluence ship took critical damage. Then another. "Return fire," Kelthor ordered. "Full power." "Destroy them!" The Confluence fleet unleashed its full might. The 6th human ship vanished in a fireball. The 7th broke in half. The 8th lost its engines and spun helplessly away. But even the dying ships kept firing until their power cores failed. The Defiant took a direct hit that tore away a third of its hull. Atmosphere vented into space. Internal explosions rippled through the ship. It should have been destroyed. Instead, Captain Worth rerouted all remaining power to engines and weapons. "We're done for anyway," she said to her bridge crew. "Those who were still alive, at least. Let's make it mean something." The Defiant accelerated one final time, driving straight toward Kelthor's flagship. The Confluence vessel's automated defenses opened fire, shredding the human cruiser piece by piece. But Worth had calculated the trajectory perfectly. The Defiant's momentum was already committed. "Admiral, that ship is going to ram us," the tactical officer shouted. "Evasive maneuvers," Kelthor ordered too late. The Defiant, or what was left of it, crashed into the flagship's port side. The impact wasn't enough to destroy the larger vessel. but the human ship's antimatter reactor detonated on contact. The explosion tore a massive hole in the flagship's hull, killing hundreds of crew members and crippling the ship's main weapons array. Worth's last transmission echoed across all frequencies. For New Harmony, no pardons. Kelthor pulled himself up from where the impact had thrown him. Half his bridge crew was dead. Systems were failing all around him. His beautiful flagship, pride of the Varen fleet, was crippled. Damage report, he demanded. Catastrophic, sir. Portside weapons offline. Shield generators destroyed. We're venting atmosphere from 40 decks. Casualty count still rising. Current estimate, 600 dead, another 300 wounded. 600 dead. From a single human ship that had already been destroyed. Kelthor felt something cold settle in his chest. The battle continued. The remaining human ships were fighting with a ferocity that defied explanation. They were outgunned, outmatched, dying by the dozens, but they refused to stop. One destroyer, its weapons destroyed and engines failing, used its last bit of maneuvering power to collide with a Confluence frigate. Both ships were annihilated in the collision. Another human ship, surrounded by 5 Confluence vessels, overloaded its reactor deliberately. The explosion took out 3 of its attackers. They're insane, Kelthor's second-in-command said. They're killing themselves to hurt us. No, Kelthor said quietly. They're buying time. Every minute we spend fighting them is another minute their civilians escape. The realization didn't make him feel better. If anything, it made the whole thing worse. These humans were dying not because they thought they could win, but because they wanted their people to live. It was brave and stupid and terrifying all at once. The last human ship, a small frigate called Remembrance, was alone now. It was surrounded by 50 Confluence vessels, all of them damaged to some degree. The frigate's shields were down. Its weapons were offline. It was dead in space. Hail them, Kelthor ordered. Offer surrender, please. Enough blood has been spilled. The communication channel opened. A human voice responded. Female, young, barely more than 20 years old by Kelthor's estimation. This is Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vance of the Remembrance. We don't surrender. But thank you for the offer. You're going to die, Kelthor said. Your ship is disabled. Your crew is wounded. You've fought bravely. No one will question your honor if you surrender now. Honor isn't why we fight, Vance replied. We fight because you came to our home and told us it wasn't ours anymore. We fight because you ignored our warning. We fight because someone has to. Then you die for nothing, Kelthor said. Your fleet is destroyed. Your colony will still fall. Your death changes nothing. There was a pause. Then Vance spoke again, and this time her voice was sad but steady. Maybe you're right. But you'll remember us. Every one of you who survives this battle will remember that 20 human ships made 300 of yours bleed. You'll remember that we didn't run. And when your fleet reaches New Harmony, when you see what we left for you there, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember that we tried to warn you. The Remembrance's power core began to spike. Kelthor realized what was happening a second too late. All ships move away from that vessel. She's going to... The Remembrance detonated. The explosion caught 4 Confluence ships too close to escape. 2 were destroyed outright. 2 more were crippled beyond repair. Kelthor stared at the empty space where the human frigate had been. 20 ships. All destroyed. But the butcher's bill for the Confluence was 47 vessels destroyed or disabled. Nearly 15% of their fleet. Lost in a battle that was supposed to be a simple demonstration of power. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from New Harmony, the communications officer said. It's on all frequencies, repeating. Play it. A calm human voice filled the bridge. This is Governor Sarah Park of New Harmony Colony. To the Confluence fleet. You have defeated our defense force. You may now proceed to our planet unopposed. However, I want you to know that every civilian has been evacuated. You will find empty cities and abandoned farms. You came here for resources. You will find that we have sabotaged every mine, every factory, every piece of infrastructure we built. This world is ours, and if we cannot keep it, we will ensure it costs you everything to take it. The transmission ended. Kelthor sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display. His fleet was damaged, his flagship crippled, thousands of his people dead or wounded, and the battle hadn't even really started yet. This was supposed to be the easy part. Analysis of the battle, he ordered. I want to know how they achieved such a favorable exchange ratio. His tactical officer worked quickly, reviewing the engagement data. When he looked up, his expression was disturbed. Sir, those human ships, they weren't military vessels. At least they weren't originally. Our scans show civilian power cores, retrofitted weapon systems, and modified hulls. They were cargo ships, mining vessels, passenger liners. Someone converted them for combat. Kelthor felt that cold sensation again. You're saying those were civilians? Not soldiers? Volunteers, sir. Based on the communication patterns we intercepted, every person on those ships chose to stay behind when the evacuation began. They were buying time for their families to escape. The bridge was silent. Kelthor's crew, all of them experienced military personnel, were trying to process what they had just heard. The ships they had destroyed weren't even proper warships. They were civilians in converted vessels, and those civilians had inflicted devastating losses on a fleet that outmatched them in every measurable way. Where is the human military fleet? Kelthor asked quietly. The tactical officer checked his sensors. Unknown, sir. We haven't detected any major human fleet movements. According to our intelligence, their main battle fleet is scattered across a dozen systems. It would take them weeks to assemble. Then what we just fought wasn't even their real navy, Kelthor said. Those were just the people who lived on New Harmony. The colonists themselves. The implications hung heavy in the air. If civilians could fight like that, what would actual human soldiers be capable of? Resume course for New Harmony, Kelthor ordered. But slowly. I want full scans of the system before we enter orbit. And someone get medical teams to all the damaged ships. Our people need help. As his fleet limped toward the planet, Kelthor sent a priority message to his father back on the Confluence homeworld. The message detailed the battle, the casualties, and the disturbing effectiveness of the human resistance. He ended the message with a question. Father, what have we started? The fleet reached New Harmony's orbit 3 days later. The planet hung beautiful and silent below them. Scans confirmed Governor Park's claim. Every city was empty. Every installation was offline. There were no signs of life except for automated systems. Sir, we're detecting massive power signatures beneath the surface, the tactical officer reported. Multiple locations across the planet. They're concentrated in the deepest mine shafts and geological fault lines. Kelthor felt a terrible certainty settle over him. What kind of power signatures? Fusion cores, antimatter containment fields, seismic charges. Sir, the entire planet is rigged to explode. They've turned their own colony into a bomb. How large a bomb? The tactical officer's hands shook as he calculated. If all those charges detonate simultaneously, it would crack the planet's crust. 'Cause massive volcanic eruptions shatter the tectonic plates. The explosion would... Sir, any ship in low orbit would be destroyed instantly. Even vessels at our current position would take severe damage. Can we disarm it? Not without sending down teams. And based on the sophistication of the setup, it would take weeks, maybe months. And sir, there's something else. The charges are linked to a dead man's switch. If we try to jam their control signals or board the planet in force, they detonate automatically. Kelthor stared at the planet. Beautiful New Harmony. The resource-rich world that was supposed to be the Confluence's prize. The world they had crossed into human territory to claim. The world that would now kill thousands more of his people if they made one wrong move. Pull the fleet back, he ordered. Get us out of the blast radius. Sir, the Arbiter's orders were to secure the planet and begin resource extraction immediately. The Arbiter's orders didn't account for the humans rigging their own planet to explode, Kelthor snapped. I will not sacrifice more lives for a world we cannot use. Move the fleet back now. The Confluence vessels began pulling away from New Harmony. They had barely cleared the danger zone when every sensor on every ship lit up at once. The planet's surface erupted. Not from weapon fire, but from within. The fusion charges detonated in sequence, precisely timed to maximize the geological damage. Fault lines split open. Volcanoes that had been dormant for millennia exploded with unimaginable force. The planet's crust buckled and heaved. Within minutes, New Harmony was dying. Massive chunks of the surface were thrown into space. The atmosphere was being stripped away by the violence of the eruptions. The beautiful world was tearing itself apart. The shockwave hit the Confluence fleet even at their safe distance. Ships rocked and rolled. Those two damaged from the earlier battle struggled to maintain position. One destroyer, its engines already compromised, lost control and began falling toward the disintegrating planet. Kelthor watched in horror as New Harmony destroyed itself. The humans had done this. They had sacrificed their own colony rather than let the Confluence have it. And they had timed it perfectly. If his fleet had been in low orbit as originally planned, they would have lost dozens more ships, possibly his entire force. Casualty report, he said numbly. 14 more ships lost or disabled from the shockwave, sir. Total fleet loss is now at 61 vessels. Over 3,000 dead, 7,000 wounded, 61 ships, 20% of their fleet. And they hadn't even reached human military forces yet. They had fought only volunteers and booby-trapped planets. As he watched New Harmony's death throes, Kelthor received another transmission. This one was from the Confluence Council, directly from his father. Status report, Admiral. Have you secured New Harmony? Kelthor looked at the screen showing the planet, or what was left of it. The world was a broken, burning wreck now, completely uninhabitable. In a few hours, it would be nothing but an asteroid field. New Harmony is lost, Father. The humans destroyed it rather than let us take it. They rigged the entire planet with explosives. We've taken heavy casualties. I request permission to withdraw and regroup. There was a long pause. Then his father's voice came back, cold and hard. Denied. The Confluence does not retreat from primitives. You will proceed with the invasion plan and secure human territory. The Council has voted. This campaign continues until humanity surrenders completely. The transmission ended. Kelthor sat alone in his damaged flagship, surrounded by the wreckage of what was supposed to be an easy victory. Behind him, New Harmony finished dying. The explosion lit up space like a new star, brief and terrible, and somewhere in the darkness beyond, he knew the real human fleet was gathering. Those 20 converted civilian vessels had been a warning, he realized now. A demonstration of what humans were willing to do, willing to sacrifice to protect what was theirs. The Confluence had ignored their warning, had dismissed their threats, had attacked their home, and now they were going to learn what that really cost. The war had truly begun. The emergency session of the Galactic Confluence Council convened within hours of New Harmony's destruction. The 12 representatives gathered in the chamber of shifting light, but the atmosphere was different now. There was no laughter, no casual dismissal. Fear had entered the room, though none would openly admit it. Senior Arbiter Kelvoth stood at the center, his silver skin seeming dimmer than before. He had just received the full casualty reports from his son's fleet. 61 ships lost, over 3,000 dead, another 7,000 wounded, and nothing to show for it except a destroyed planet that was useless to everyone now. This is an outrage, the Thracian representative said, its watery form rippling with agitation. The humans destroyed their own colony. They killed themselves out of spite. This is the behavior of mad creatures, is it? Asked a representative from the Kelrath species, a being that resembled a massive insect with crystalline wings. Or is it the behavior of a species that means exactly what it says? They warned us. We ignored the warning. This is the result. We cannot appear weak, Kelvoth said, his voice carrying the weight of grief for his son's losses. If we withdraw now, every minor species in the galaxy will think they can defy us. We must continue. We must show humanity that their resistance is futile. At what cost? Another representative asked. We've lost 20% of the invasion fleet. Against civilians, what happens when we face their actual military? We have reserves, Kelvoth insisted. 40,000 ships total across all Confluence space. Even if humanity's full fleet is 800 vessels, we still outnumber them 50 to 1. Numbers didn't help us at New Harmony, the Kelrath said quietly. Before Kelvoth could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber. Such interruptions were almost unheard of, but the aide's urgency was obvious. Senior Arbiter, we're receiving reports from all border systems. Human vessels have been detected, not attacking, but blocking. They've established perimeters around every Confluence system, preventing ships from entering or leaving. The chamber erupted in confused voices. The Thracian spoke over the others. How many ships? Where did they come from? 400 vessels, sir. They appeared simultaneously in 40 different locations. Our intelligence had no indication they were even assembling such a fleet. Kelvoth felt something twist in his chest. 400 ships, exactly as many as his intelligence reports had said humanity possessed beyond the New Harmony Defense Force. That meant every combat-capable human vessel was now deployed. They were committing everything to this war. Are they attacking? He demanded. No, sir. They're just waiting, blocking trade routes and communication channels. But they've broadcast a message. It's being repeated on all frequencies. Play it. The voice that filled the chamber was calm, measured, and absolutely certain. It belonged to Admiral James Zhao of the Human Confederation Navy. To the Galactic Confluence. You were given a warning. You ignored it. You attacked our colony. You killed our people. Now you will learn why humans survived extinction-level events on Earth 6 times. Why we emerged from our own worst wars and rebuilt. Why you should have listened when we told you to leave us alone. This is your second chance. Your last chance. Withdraw all forces from human territory. Recognize our sovereignty over all settled human worlds. Do this within 72 hours, or we will demonstrate why humanity's reputation for persistence and retribution is not propaganda. It is mercy showing restraint. You have 72 hours, the message ended. Silence filled the chamber. This is a bluff, Kelvoth said, but his voice lacked conviction. 400 ships cannot threaten the entire confluence, and can't they? The Kelrath representative said. They just blockaded 40 of our systems simultaneously. That level of coordination, that precise timing suggests a military capability we severely underestimated. I say we call their bluff, the Thracian said. Send our reserve fleets to break the blockades. Show them what real military power looks like. 3 species representatives voted with the Thracian, but 5 voted against. It was the first time in Confluence history that the Council had been so divided. We need more information, one of the neutral representatives said. What is humanity's actual military capacity? What are these extinction events they mentioned? What did they mean by persistence and retribution? I'll tell you what they meant, came a new voice. Ambassador Chen appeared on a communication screen, patched in from his ship somewhere in neutral space. They meant that humans don't forget. We don't forgive. And we don't stop, ever. You could have had peace. You could have had a neighbor who traded fairly and caused no trouble. Instead, you chose war. Now you get to see what humans become when you threaten our survival. Threatening us won't change anything, Kelvoth said. The Confluence has made its decision. We do not negotiate with those who defy us. Then enjoy the next 72 hours, Chen said. They'll be the last peaceful ones you have for a very long time. The transmission ended. The Confluence Council voted 8-4 in favor of continuing the war. Additional fleets would be dispatched to break the human blockades. The conflict would escalate until humanity surrendered or was destroyed. Kelvoth returned to his private chambers after the vote, exhausted and grieving. His son had survived the battle at New Harmony, but the report suggested the young admiral was traumatized by what he had witnessed. Kelthor's messages spoke of humans who fought with a ferocity that defied logic, who sacrificed themselves without hesitation, who destroyed their own world rather than let it be taken. What kind of species did such things? Kelvoth pulled up humanity's file in the Confluence database. He had read it before, of course, but superficially. Now he studied it in detail. Earth, a single planet that had nearly destroyed itself multiple times. Nuclear war, biological warfare, climate collapse, asteroid impacts, global pandemics, supervolcanic eruptions. Each one had pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. Each time they had survived. Not through luck, but through sheer stubborn determination. The file included analysis from Confluence sociologists. One passage caught his attention. Human psychology appears unique among known sapient species. They possess an unusual combination of individual self-interest and group loyalty. A human will sacrifice themselves for their community without hesitation, yet will fight viciously to protect that same community from external threats. This makes them simultaneously cooperative and dangerous. Recommendation: avoid forcing humans into survival mode. Their response is disproportionate and sustained. The report was over a century old. No one had paid attention to it. Kelvoth was still reading when the first reports came in. The 72-hour deadline was still 60 hours away, but humanity apparently didn't feel like waiting. The attacks began simultaneously across Confluence space. Not military attacks, something worse. Human teams, small groups of specialists, infiltrated Confluence worlds. They didn't target civilians. They didn't bomb cities. Instead, they hit infrastructure with surgical precision. Power generation facilities went offline. Water treatment plants stopped working. Communication networks crashed. Transportation systems failed. Food distribution centers lost refrigeration. On the Varan homeworld, the capital city woke to find its power grid completely dead. No electricity, no heat, no water pumping, nothing. Engineers rushed to fix it but found every critical component had been sabotaged in ways that would take weeks to repair. The same thing happened on 11 other confluence worlds. 12 major planets, each one home to billions of beings, suddenly found themselves without basic services. No one was hurt. That was the terrifying part. The human infiltrators had been careful to avoid casualties. They disabled systems when facilities were empty. They left warning signs to prevent accidents. They even provided evacuation timelines. One message found at every sabotage site said simply, "This is a demonstration. We could have killed millions. We chose not to. Leave our territory or next time we will not be so kind." Kelvoth stared at the reports in disbelief. 12 worlds, sabotaged simultaneously. Human teams must have been in place for months, waiting, watching, preparing. And the Confluence Intelligence Services had detected nothing. How deeply had humanity infiltrated their society? The Confluence Council met again, this time in genuine alarm. Their worlds were in chaos. Civilians were panicking. Governments were struggling to maintain order without power or water. "We need to respond," the Thracian said. "Send troops to Earth. Let them see what sabotage feels like." "We tried that," the Kelrath reminded them. "We sent 300 ships to take one human colony. 61 of those ships are now wreckage, and humanity has blockaded 40 of our systems. If we send forces to Earth, what do you think happens to those blockades?" "They attack," another representative said quietly. "And our systems are isolated, unable to support each other. Divide and conquer. It's a classic strategy, and we walked right into it." "How do we fix our infrastructure?" someone asked. "Our people need power and water." "The sabotage is incredibly sophisticated," a technical advisor reported. "The humans didn't just break things. They broke them in very specific ways that require custom replacement parts. Parts we don't have in stock. Parts that will take weeks or months to manufacture. Unless we trade with someone who has them," another advisor noted. "But with our systems blockaded, trade is impossible." The trap was elegant. Humanity had blockaded confluence space, cutting off trade. Then they had sabotaged infrastructure in ways that required outside resources to fix. The confluence could repair the damage, but it would take time. Time during which billions of civilians suffered. Time during which support for the war would collapse. Kelvoth saw the strategy clearly now. Humans weren't trying to win through military might. They were applying pressure, creating suffering, forcing the confluence population to demand their governments end the war. It was psychological warfare on a scale he had never imagined. "We have to break the blockades," he said. "Send the reserve fleets. All of them, if necessary. We cannot let humanity dictate terms to us," the order went out. Confluence reserve fleets, thousands of ships, began moving toward the human blockade positions. Surely sheer numbers would break through. The first fleet to engage the blockade was at a mining system in confluence-controlled space. 500 confluence vessels against 30 human ships. The outcome should have been obvious. But the human ships didn't fight the way the confluence expected. They didn't hold a defensive line. Instead, they scattered using hit-and-run tactics. They would appear, fire at a confluence ship with frightening accuracy, then disappear before return fire could connect. The confluence fleet spent 3 days chasing 30 human ships around the system. They destroyed 5 of them, but the other 25 destroyed or disabled 40 confluence vessels, and the blockade remained in place. The same pattern repeated across multiple systems. Humanity had split their 400 ships into small squadrons that were impossible to pin down. They fought like pirates, like guerrillas, using mobility and surprise to offset their numerical disadvantage. And they were winning, slowly at terrible cost to themselves, but winning. 2 weeks into the war, the confluence had lost another 200 ships. Humanity had lost 90. But the human losses were spread so thin that no single defeat mattered. Meanwhile, confluence worlds were still without power. Food was running short. Riots were starting. The Kelrath representative called for peace negotiations. 3 other species supported the call. The confluence was fracturing. Kelvoth refused. His son was out there, still fighting. His people had lost thousands. To surrender now would mean all those deaths were for nothing. He sent a message to Admiral Kelthor. "End this. Find a way to hurt them badly enough that they sue for peace. We need a victory, son. We need it soon." Kelthor received the message aboard his repaired flagship. He had been fighting humans for 2 weeks now and had learned terrible lessons about them. They didn't fight to win battles. They fought to make every battle cost more than it was worth. But his father was right. The confluence needed a victory. something dramatic, something that would break human morale. He looked at the star charts. Most human colonies were heavily defended now, but there was one target that might be vulnerable. One target that would hurt humanity so badly they would have to negotiate. Earth itself. Assemble a strike force, Kelthor ordered. Pick ships from every available fleet. I want 150 vessels, the fastest and most powerful we have. We're going to bypass the blockades and hit the humans where it hurts most. His second-in-command looked uncertain. Sir, Earth will be heavily defended. I'm counting on it, Kelthor said. Every ship defending Earth is a ship not blockading our systems. And if we can threaten their homeworld, force them to pull back to protect it, we break their stranglehold on our territory. It was a desperate plan, but desperate times called for desperate measures. The Confluence Strike Force assembled in secret, gathering ships from across their territory. They used captured human navigation data to plot a route that would bypass the main blockade positions. It would take them 2 weeks to reach Earth, but the element of surprise would be worth it. Kelthor didn't tell his father the full plan. He didn't tell anyone, because in his heart, he knew this wasn't about victory anymore. This was about survival. The Confluence was losing this war in ways that wouldn't show up on casualty reports for months. Their economy was collapsing. Their population was turning against the government. Their military was being bled dry by an enemy that refused to fight fair. This attack on Earth was a gamble. If it worked, humanity might negotiate. If it failed, Kelthor didn't want to think about what failure would mean. The strike force departed in secret, moving through lesser-known hyperspace routes. Kelthor sat in his command chair and tried not to think about the warnings Ambassador Chen had given. Tried not to remember the human voices on those 20 doomed ships at New Harmony. Tried not to wonder what would happen if he was wrong. Behind him, in Confluence space, the situation continued to deteriorate. More systems fell to human sabotage. More civilians suffered. More governments faced rebellion. The war was 2 weeks old, and the Confluence was already losing. They just didn't know it yet. The Confluence Strike Force traveled through hyperspace for 2 weeks, silent and determined. 150 ships, the finest vessels from a dozen species, all focused on a single mission. They would strike at Earth, the human homeworld, and force humanity to negotiate. Admiral Kelthor had staked everything on this gamble. As they approached the Sol system, Kelthor reviewed what little intelligence they had on Earth's defenses. The planet was supposedly protected by a defense grid and a fleet of perhaps 50 ships. Against his 150 vessels, those defenses should crumble quickly. He would issue an ultimatum: withdraw from Confluence space or watch your homeworld burn. He didn't want to hurt civilians. After seeing what humans were willing to do at New Harmony, after fighting them for 2 weeks, he had developed a grudging respect for them. But the Confluence was dying. His people were suffering. He needed to end this war, and threatening Earth was the only way he could think to do it. The strike force emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Sensors immediately began scanning for human defenses. Sir, we're detecting minimal defense presence, the tactical officer reported. 12 ships in orbit around Earth, no sign of additional forces. 12 ships, even fewer than expected. Kelthor felt a cold suspicion settle over him. After 2 weeks of clever tactics and brutal efficiency, why would humanity leave their homeworld so poorly defended? Full scan, he ordered. I want to know the position of every object larger than a shuttle in this system. Check every asteroid, every moon, every debris field. His tactical officer worked for several minutes, reviewing the sensor data carefully. Sir, I'm detecting unusual readings throughout the system. Small power signatures, thousands of them, but they're dormant. They could be sensor buoys or mines or ships in stealth mode, Kelthor finished. His suspicion was growing into certainty. This is a trap. Sir, should we withdraw? Kelthor looked at the tactical display. Earth hung there, blue and beautiful. The birthplace of humanity. So close, he had come so far. His people were depending on him. If he turned back now without even trying, what would that accomplish? No, he said. But we proceed carefully. Battle formation, shields at maximum, weapons ready, and keep scanning. I want to know the instant anything changes. The Confluence fleet moved into the system, advancing slowly toward Earth. The 12 human ships in orbit did nothing. They just waited. Kelthor hailed them. Human vessels, this is Admiral Kelthor of the Galactic Confluence. Your homeworld is at our mercy. Withdraw your forces from confluence space immediately, or we will be forced to demonstrate the price of your defiance. The response came quickly. The voice was familiar. Admiral James Zhao, commander of the human fleet. Admiral Kelthor, we've been expecting you. Welcome to Seoul. This is where we learn to fight. The moment Zhao finished speaking, the system lit up. Thousands of power signatures activated simultaneously. Ships decloaked in every direction. They had been hiding everywhere. Behind moons and asteroid fields, even in the planet's orbital space using advanced stealth technology. Contact, the tactical officer shouted. Massive multiple contacts. I'm reading. Sir, I'm reading over 3,000 vessels. 3,000. Kelthor felt his heart freeze. 3,000 ships. Humanity was supposed to have 800 vessels total. Where had the rest come from? Impossible, his second-in-command whispered. Our intelligence was wrong, Kelthor said. He understood now. Humanity had been hiding most of their fleet. All those months of appearing peaceful and weak had been deliberate. They had wanted the confluence to underestimate them. The human ships surrounded his fleet completely. Kelthor's 150 vessels were caught in a perfect sphere of enemies. Escape was impossible. Admiral Zhao's voice filled the communication channels again. Admiral Kelthor, I'm going to explain something to you. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've developed every weapon, every tactic, every strategy imaginable. We've fought on land, in air, in sea, and in space. We've waged wars that nearly destroyed our species. And every time we learned, every time we survived. Do you know what that taught us? Kelthor didn't respond. He was calculating odds, looking for any possible escape route. There was none. It taught us that the best way to win a war is to never let it start. Zhao continued. But when war comes anyway, when someone ignores every warning and every chance for peace, then we fight with everything we have. You came to our home, Admiral. You thought we'd left it undefended. But this is Earth. This is where 8 billion humans live. Did you really think we'd leave it vulnerable? Your fleet was supposed to be scattered across a dozen systems, Kelthor said, blockading our space. How did you get them all here? We didn't, Zhao said. The ships blockading your territory are still there. These ships are our reserve fleet, the one we've been building in secret for the past 50 years. The one we hoped we'd never need to use. You forced our hand, Admiral. You made us bring out everything. 50 years. Humanity had been preparing for this war for half a century. They had built a secret fleet, hidden it perfectly, and waited. They had played weak and peaceful while building the capacity to fight. You lied to us, Kelthor said. No, Zhao replied. We told you to stay out of our territory. We told you there would be consequences. You chose not to believe us. That's not lying. That's you being arrogant. The Confluence fleet was still surrounded. Kelthor's ships were powering weapons, but it was useless. Against 3,000 ships, they couldn't possibly win. What do you want? Kelthor asked. Your surrender, Zhao said simply. Power down your weapons. Lower your shields. Accept boarding parties that will take control of your vessels. Do this and no one else has to die today. Refuse and we will destroy your fleet. The choice is yours. Kelthor looked at his bridge crew. They were scared. He could see it in their faces. These were professional soldiers, but they had never faced odds this impossible. If I surrender, what happens to my people? He asked. We treat them with honor, Zhao said. Medical care for the wounded. Food and shelter for prisoners. Eventually repatriation when this war ends. We're not monsters, Admiral. We don't punish soldiers for following orders. And if I refuse, then you die. All of you. And when your fleet doesn't return home, your government will send another. And we'll destroy that one too. And another, until the Confluence runs out of ships or wisdom. Your choice, Admiral. Live as prisoners or die as examples. Kelthor closed his eyes. He thought of his father, back on the home world expecting victory. He thought of the thousands of crew members under his command, people who trusted him to bring them home. He thought of Captain Worth and her volunteers at New Harmony, who had died to buy time for their civilians to escape. These humans weren't bluffing. They had proven that over and over, and they were giving him a choice that his own forces had never given the humans: surrender and live. All ships, he said quietly. Stand down. Power down weapons. Lower shields. We surrender. The relief on his bridge crew's faces was obvious, but the tactical officer had a question. Sir, why are they doing this? They have us trapped. They could just destroy us and remove us as a threat. Before Kelthor could answer, Admiral Zhao did. Because removing you as a threat isn't our goal. Our goal is ending this war. Dead soldiers are martyrs. Prisoners are teachers. When you go home, you'll tell your people what happened here. You'll tell them about the fleet they didn't know we had. You'll tell them that we offered mercy even when we didn't have to. And maybe, just maybe, they'll start listening to our warnings. Human boarding parties arrived within the hour. They were professional and polite. They provided medical care to Confluence wounded. They offered food and water to crew members who needed it. They treated their prisoners with a respect that confused and disturbed Kelthor. These were the same beings who had destroyed their own planet. The same ones who had fought to the death with converted civilian ships. The same ones who had sabotaged Confluence infrastructure. But here in victory they were merciful. One human officer, a young woman with captain's insignia, spoke to Kelthor as his crew was being processed. "I was at New Harmony," she said, "on one of the evacuation ships. I watched from orbit as the planet died. My grandmother chose to stay behind. She was on one of the defense ships. The Remembrance, Kelthor remembered that ship. The last one destroyed. The young commander who had detonated her vessel rather than surrender. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it, "are you?" the captain asked. "My grandmother died because you came to our home. Because your people decided our colony didn't belong to us. Because you ignored our warning. So I want you to understand something. We don't forgive that. We don't pardon what you did. But we don't need to kill you to make you understand the price of what you've done." She walked away, leaving Kelthor with his thoughts. The captured Confluence fleet was held in Sol System for 3 days, while human engineers examined their ships and gathered intelligence. Then Admiral Zhao called Kelthor to his flagship. The human command ship was smaller than Kelthor expected, but clearly efficient. Zhao met him in a simple office, not the grand chambers Confluence admirals preferred. "Your ships will be returned to you," Zhao said without preamble. "We're removing your weapon systems and faster-than-light drives. You'll have conventional engines and life support, enough to get home but not enough to fight. You're letting us go?" Kelthor couldn't hide his surprise. "Yes," Zhao said. "But first I want to show you something." He activated a holographic display. It showed casualty reports from the war so far. Confluence losses: 418 ships, 12,000 dead, 30,000 wounded. Human losses: 167 ships, 6,000 dead, 11,000 wounded. "See these numbers?" Zhao said. "Every person on these lists was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Human and Confluence alike. They all died because your government ignored a warning, because pride mattered more than peace." He changed the display to show footage from Confluence worlds. Civilians suffering without power or water. Food shortages, protests, riots. "This is what war really looks like," Zhao continued. "Not glorious battles. Not heroic sacrifices. Just suffering. On both sides. Is this what your people wanted? Is this worth whatever resources you thought you'd gain from New Harmony?" Kelthor watched the footage and felt shame burn through him. "What do you want me to tell my government?" "The truth," Zhao said. "Tell them we offered peace twice. They refused twice. Tell them we could have destroyed your fleet today but chose not to. Tell them that we're tired of fighting, but we'll keep fighting until they recognize our right to exist unmolested. And tell them this is their third and final warning. Withdraw from human space. Recognize our sovereignty. Or next time we won't be so merciful." Zhao stood and extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. After a moment, Kelthor took it. "One question," Kelthor said. "Why? Why show mercy to an enemy? We tried to destroy your colony. We killed your people. Why not just eliminate us as a threat?" Zhao's expression was sad but firm. "Because we're human. We know what total war looks like. We know what genocide costs. We know what happens when you dehumanize your enemy and treat them as nothing but targets. We've done all of that to each other, over and over throughout our history. And every time we paid a terrible price. So yes, we could destroy you. We have the capability, but having the power to do something and choosing not to is what separates us from becoming the monsters we fight against." He released Kelthor's hand. "Go home, Admiral. Tell them we don't pardon what they did, but tell them we don't need revenge either. We just want to be left alone." The modified Confluence ships departed Sol System 3 days later, traveling slowly on their limited engines. It would take them a month to reach home. A month to think about what they had seen. Kelthor spent that time writing his report. Every detail of the battle, the trap, the mercy, the warning. He knew his father wouldn't want to hear it. The Confluence Council would probably ignore it. But he had to try. As they traveled, he thought about Captain Worth and her volunteers, about Governor Park and the colonists who had destroyed their own world, about Admiral Zhao and his mercy. These humans were terrifying, not because of their weapons or their tactics, but because they could be pushed to the brink of annihilation and still choose restraint. They could hate you for what you'd done and still treat you with dignity. They could win completely and still offer peace. That was the truly frightening thing. They didn't fight like soldiers. They fought like survivors, and survivors never forgot. When the fleet finally reached confluence space, they found their territory still blockaded. Human ships still controlled the trade routes. But Kelthor broadcast his report on all frequencies, making sure everyone, civilian and military alike, could hear what had happened at Earth. The message was simple. We were given a third warning. We should take it, because next time they might not offer a fourth. His father received the message in his chambers on the Varen homeworld. Senior Arbiter Kelvoth read his son's report 3 times, each time hoping he had misread something. But the facts were clear. The Confluence had lost. Not just the battle at Earth, but the war. They had underestimated humanity from the start. Mistaken patience for weakness, mercy for cowardice, peace for inability to wage war. And now they were paying the price. The question was, would they learn from it? Or would pride push them to make the same mistake one final time? Kelvoth looked at the reports from his own worlds. Civilians were suffering. The economy was collapsing. 3 more species were demanding peace negotiations. The Confluence was fracturing. He had one choice left. One desperate gamble that might save his people or might doom them forever. He called an emergency meeting of the Council. It was time to make a decision. Either they sued for peace and admitted defeat, or they gambled everything on one last attack. An attack so devastating that humanity would have no choice but to surrender. Kelvoth had already made his choice. He just had to convince the others. The war was about to enter its final phase, and the price was about to get much, much higher. The emergency session of the Galactic Confluence Council was the most heated in their 3,000-year history. Senior Arbiter Kelvoth stood at the center of the chamber, but his authority was crumbling. 8 of the 12 member species had already voted to open peace negotiations with humanity. They had seen enough, but Kelvoth and 3 others refused to accept defeat. The Varen, the Thracian, the Korthan, and the Zelvek species formed a coalition of the desperate. They had lost the most in the war. They had the most pride to preserve. And they were willing to gamble everything on one final strategy. We cannot negotiate from weakness, Kelvoth insisted. If we surrender now, humanity will dictate terms. They will demand reparations, territory, perhaps even trials for war crimes. We cannot accept that. Then what do you propose? The Kelrath representative asked wearily. We've lost nearly 500 ships. Our economy is in ruins. Our civilians are starving. What miracle are you expecting? Kelvoth activated a holographic display. It showed a schematic of a biological weapon, something the Confluence had developed centuries ago but never used. A virus specifically designed to target carbon-based life forms with human-like genetics. The chamber fell silent. You cannot be serious, one of the representatives whispered. Biological warfare? Genocide? We are not monsters. We are survivors, Kelvoth said coldly. The humans have demonstrated they will not stop until they have humiliated us completely. They destroyed their own colony rather than let us have it. They are fanatics. So we meet fanaticism with absolute force. We deploy the weapon. We threaten to exterminate their species. Then we negotiate from strength. This is insane, the Kelrath said. Even if we deployed such a weapon, it would take months to manufacture enough to threaten all human worlds. And the moment they discover what we're doing, they'll attack with everything they have. Let them, Kelvoth said. We'll position the weapon on a dozen worlds simultaneously. If they attack, if they destroy our government, automated systems will deploy the virus, mutually assured destruction. They surrender or their species dies. The vote was called. 4 species supported the plan. 8 rejected it with horror. The Confluence was officially fractured. Then the coalition of the 4 will act alone, Kelvoth declared. The rest of you may sue for peace. We will not. What Kelvoth didn't know was that human intelligence had infiltrated the Confluence so thoroughly that his entire plan was transmitted to Earth Command within hours. Every detail of the biological weapon, every proposed deployment site, everything. Admiral Zhao received the intelligence report in his office aboard his flagship. He read it twice, then closed his eyes and took a long breath. After a minute, he opened a secure channel to Earth's government. Madam President, we have a situation. The Confluence is planning to deploy biological weapons against human colonies. It's an extinction-level threat. I need authorization to respond. President Sarah Kim was in her third year of office, elected partly because of her military background and partly because of her reputation for level-headed decision-making. She had hoped to avoid war entirely. Now she was managing humanity's first true galactic conflict. What are our options? She asked. Militarily, we can strike first. Take out their bioweapon facilities before they're operational. But Admiral, there's something else. Our intelligence indicates that the Confluence leadership plans to make this plot public. They want the galaxy to know they're willing to commit genocide. It's a deterrent strategy. And if we attack them first, we prove them right. We become the monsters they claim we are. Every species in the galaxy will fear us. Kim was silent for a long moment. What do you recommend? I recommend we beat them at their own game, Zhao said. We make their plan public first. We show the galaxy what the Confluence is planning. Let galactic opinion do our work for us. Within 24 hours, every major government and news organization in the galaxy received a data package from an anonymous source. It contained complete schematics of the Confluence biological weapon, communication logs showing the plan's development and projections of the death toll if it was deployed. Billions of humans. Extinction of an entire species. The galactic reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Even species that had remained neutral throughout the war condemned the Confluence's plan. The idea of genocide horrified civilizations that had spent millennia building laws against such actions. On Confluence worlds, the civilian populations revolted. Protests turned into riots. Riots turned into revolutions. The Corthan government fell first, replaced by an emergency civilian council that immediately sued for peace with humanity. The Zelvek followed within days. That left only the Varen and the Thracian. Kelvoth's own government was besieged by its own people. Citizens demanded his resignation. Military officers refused orders. The bioweapon facilities were shut down by their own staff, who refused to participate in genocide. Kelvoth sat in his office watching his world burn through the windows. Everything he had built, everything he had fought for, was collapsing. His son had tried to warn him. Ambassador Chen had tried to warn him. Even his own people had tried to warn him. But he hadn't listened. The communication system activated. A familiar face appeared. Ambassador David Chen. Senior Arbiter Kelvoth. Your government has fallen. Your coalition has dissolved. Your bioweapon plan has been exposed. You've lost everything. I'm offering you one final chance to end this with some dignity. Surrender. Unconditionally. Allow humanity to negotiate a peace treaty with your interim government. Do it now, before more people die. And if I refuse? Kelvoth asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we come for you, Chen said simply. Not with armies, not with weapons. We come with evidence. We show every being in the galaxy exactly what you tried to do. You become history's greatest monster. Your species lives in shame for generations. Your children's children will curse your name. Is that how you want to be remembered? Kelvoth looked at the holographic display showing casualty numbers. 18,000 Confluence dead. 11,000 humans dead. Trillions of beings suffering because he had refused to accept that humans meant what they said. He had ignored the first warning, dismissed the second, and almost triggered genocide at the third. How many chances did one leader deserve? I surrender, he said quietly. On behalf of the Varen government, what remains of it, I surrender unconditionally. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The war was over. Humanity had won without firing another shot. The Confluence coalition of 4 had dissolved. Peace negotiations would begin immediately, but the question everyone asked was simple. What would humanity demand? They had won completely. They could ask for anything: territory, resources, revenge. The galaxy waited to see what kind of victors humans would be. The peace conference was held on a neutral station, one operated by the Kelrath species. Ambassador Chen led the human delegation. Across from him sat representatives from all 12 former confluent species, including a broken senior arbiter, Kelvoth. Chen placed a data tablet on the table. These are humanities terms, 3 conditions, nothing more. The confluence representatives looked at each other in confusion. 3 conditions? They had expected dozens, reparations, territory, punishments, but just 3? First, Chen said, all confluent species must formally recognize human sovereignty over all settled human worlds and claimed territories. No disputes, no challenges. What is ours is ours. Heads nodded around the table. That was reasonable. Expected even. Second, Chen continued, the 4 species that supported the biological weapon plan must undergo complete demilitarization for 50 years. You will maintain only defensive forces, no offensive capabilities, and your compliance will be monitored by the 8 species that sued for peace early. Not by us, by your former allies. Kelvoth closed his eyes. It was a clever punishment. The Varen would be weak, protected only by the mercy of their neighbors. But it wasn't extermination. It wasn't even particularly harsh by the standards of galactic warfare. Third, Chen said, and his voice became softer, sadder. We require a memorial, on the site where New Harmony used to orbit before we destroyed it. A station, a place of remembrance, and on that memorial, you will inscribe every name, every human who died in this war, every confluent soldier who died, every civilian who suffered, every being whose life was touched by this conflict. Human and alien alike, equal in death as they should have been equal in life. Silence filled the chamber. The confluence representative stared at Chen in disbelief. That's it? The Throssian representative asked. No reparations? No territory? No trials? That's it, Chen confirmed. We don't need your resources. We have our own. We don't want your territory. We have enough. And we don't want revenge. We just want you to remember. Remember what this war cost. Remember that we warned you. Remember that it didn't have to happen. Why? Kelvoth asked, his voice breaking. We tried to exterminate your species. We killed thousands of your people. Why show us mercy? Chen looked at him for a long moment. Because we're human, Senior Arbiter. We remember our own history. We know what revenge costs. We know what happens when you dehumanize your enemies and treat them as less than people. We've done it to ourselves over and over. And every time we paid a terrible price. So yes, we could destroy you. We could demand everything you have. But what would that make us? Just another oppressor. Just another reason for the next war. He stood up. We don't pardon what you did. We will never forget, but we don't need to punish you to ensure our safety. Your own people will remember this shame far longer than any punishment we could impose. The memorial will stand for 1,000 years, reminding everyone who passes by that pride and arrogance led to suffering on both sides. That's justice enough. The treaty was signed that day. All 12 species agreed to the terms without changes. The war was officially over, barely 6 weeks after it had begun. The shortest galactic war in recorded history, and the first one ended not by the victor's sword, but by the victor's mercy. The years that followed were strange for everyone involved. The confluence dissolved as a political entity, though the species remained connected through trade and cultural exchange. The 8 species that had sued for peace early formed new partnerships with humanity. Trust was slow to build, but it grew. The 4 demilitarized species struggled at first. The Varen, particularly, found their new weakness difficult to accept. But slowly they adapted. Their economy shifted from military production to science and art. Their culture, so long focused on strength and dominance, began to value wisdom and cooperation instead. 5 years after the war, the New Harmony Memorial Station was completed. It was massive, built from materials donated by every species involved in the conflict. At its center was a chamber containing holographic displays. 63,000 names. Humans and aliens, soldiers and civilians, all remembered equally. Former Senior Arbiter Kelvoth attended the dedication ceremony. He was old now, retired from public life, living quietly on a farming world, but he had insisted on being present. Ambassador Chen, also older and grayer, greeted him at the station entrance. "Thank you for coming," Chen said. "I had to see it," Kelvoth replied. "I had to see what my pride cost." They walked together through the memorial. The names floated in the air, thousands of them, each one representing a life cut short or changed forever. They stopped at a particular section. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Vance, Commander Elizabeth Worth, Governor Sarah Park, the volunteers of New Harmony's defense fleet. These people died because I didn't listen, Kelvoth said quietly, because I thought humans were weak, because I believed might meant right. They died because they chose to, Chen corrected gently. They chose to stand between you and their families. They chose to buy time with their lives. That was their decision, their sacrifice. You didn't make them heroes. They already were. Kelvoth moved to another section. His son's name was there too. Not because Kelthor had died, but because the memorial listed every soldier who had fought, human and confluence alike. The fighters were remembered separately from the civilians. My son told me about his experience at Earth, Kelvoth said, about Admiral Zhao's mercy, about being captured and treated with dignity. He said it was the most terrifying moment of his life, realizing that you could have killed him and chose not to. Your son is a good officer, Chen said. He learned from his mistakes. He tried to warn you. That takes courage. More courage than I had, Kelvoth admitted. I should have listened to him. Should have listened to you. Should have listened to everyone who told me I was wrong. They walked in silence for a while, reading names, remembering. Finally, Kelvoth spoke again. Ambassador Chen, answer me honestly. Do humans truly not seek revenge? Do you truly not hate us for what we did? Chen considered the question carefully. Some humans do hate you. Some lost loved ones and will never forgive. That's natural. That's grief. But as a species, as a civilization? No, we don't hate you. We understand you. You saw something you wanted and took it, believing you had the right. Humans have done the same thing countless times in our history. We've conquered, enslaved, destroyed, all in the name of strength and superiority. We know exactly what you are because we've been you. Then how did you stop? How did humanity learn to be better? We didn't stop, Chen said honestly. We still fight. We still have conflicts. But we learned to recognize the cost of those conflicts. We learned that winning isn't the same as being right. We learned that having power and choosing not to use it is true strength. We learned by nearly destroying ourselves 6 times, by seeing what we became when we gave in to our worst impulses. And we decided, collectively, painfully, that we had to be better. Not perfect, just better. Kelvoth nodded slowly. And now you're teaching us the same lesson. No, Chen said. We're showing you the option exists. Learning it is up to you. They reached the central chamber of the memorial. Here the names disappeared, replaced by a single holographic display. It showed 2 worlds, Earth and the Viren homeworld, both beautiful, both fragile, both populated by beings who loved and hoped and feared. This is what we fight to protect, Chen said. Not territory, not resources, not pride, just the right for people to live their lives in peace. That's all we wanted from the beginning. That's all we ever asked for. And we refused to give it, Kelvoth said. We thought we knew better. Yes, Chen agreed. And now you know the price of that arrogance. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? Kelvoth looked at the display, at his homeworld spinning peacefully. His people were alive because humans had chosen mercy. His species had a future, because humans didn't believe in revenge. Everything he had been taught about strength and dominance had been proven wrong by beings he had dismissed as primitives. We'll remember, he said finally. We'll teach our children what happened here. We'll make sure no one forgets the cost of ignoring warnings, of letting pride rule decisions, of treating others as less than ourselves. That's all I can promise. But I promise it absolutely. Then perhaps, Chen said, something good can come from all this tragedy. Perhaps the next generation will be wiser than ours. They left the memorial together, parting at the docking bays with a respectful nod. Kelvoth returned to his farm. Chen returned to Earth. 10 years after the war, a new generation of Viren children visited the memorial as part of their education. They read the names. They learned the history. They asked their teachers the question every child eventually asks. Why did we attack the humans? Why didn't we listen to their warnings? And the teachers, many of whom had fought in the war, gave the same answer every time. Because we were arrogant. Because we thought being strong meant being right. Because we didn't believe anyone could stand against us. And because we didn't understand that humans don't pardon, but they do remember. The children would look confused, and the teachers would explain. Humans don't forgive what we did. They still remember New Harmony. They still remember every name on this memorial, but they didn't need to destroy us to make us understand. They showed us mercy, and that mercy was more powerful than any weapon, because now we owe them a debt we can never repay. We owe them our existence, and that's something no one will ever forget. 30 years after the war, the Human Confederation and the former confluent species formed a new alliance, not based on dominance but on mutual respect. The alliance's founding principle, inscribed on every official document, was simple: honor all warnings. Pride costs more than dignity. Ambassador Chen, old and ready to retire, attended the founding ceremony. Admiral Zhao stood beside him, equally aged. They watched as young representatives from a dozen species signed the charter, creating something new, something better. "Do you think it will last?" Zhao asked. "Nothing lasts forever," Chen replied, "but it's a start. And sometimes that's all you can hope for." 50 years after the war on Earth, a classroom full of children learned about the conflict. They were the generation born after the peace, children who had never known war. One student raised her hand. "Teacher, why did we let them live? The confluents tried to kill us all. Why didn't we destroy them when we had the chance?" The teacher, a veteran of the war herself, smiled sadly. She had been asked this question hundreds of times over the years. Because being able to destroy someone and choosing not to is real strength. Because revenge might feel good for a moment, but mercy builds something that lasts. And because we're human, we remember what we've done to ourselves throughout history. We remember the wars that nearly ended us. We remember the weapons, the hatred, the genocide. And we decided as a species that we wouldn't become the monsters we once were. We would be better. "But don't they hate us for winning?" another student asked. "For making them weak?" "Some do," the teacher admitted. "Some always will, but most are grateful, because we could have done to them what they tried to do to us. We had every reason, every justification, every opportunity, and we didn't. We showed them there was another way, and now 50 years later they're our partners. Our friends, our allies. Would that be true if we'd chosen revenge?" The students were quiet, thinking. The teacher looked out the window at the peaceful Earth sky and thought about all the names on the New Harmony Memorial. All the people who had died so these children could grow up in a galaxy that chose wisdom over warfare. "Remember," she told her students, "humans don't pardon. We don't forget. But we don't need revenge to prove we're strong. We proved that by surviving, by rebuilding, by choosing mercy when we could have chosen destruction. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us strong." The lesson ended. The children went home. And somewhere in space, the New Harmony Memorial continued its eternal vigil, remembering everyone who had fallen, reminding everyone who passed by of the simple truth that had ended a war and built a peace. Humans don't pardon, but they remember. And sometimes mercy is the most terrifying strength of all. In his quiet farm on the barren homeworld, former senior arbiter Kelvoth sat on his porch and watched the sunset. He was very old now, near the end of his long life. But every evening he did the same thing. He spoke the names of the humans who had died because of his decisions. All of them, as many as he could remember. It was his private penance, his way of remembering, his acknowledgement that humans had given him something he hadn't deserved, a chance to learn, to grow, to be better. "We were wrong," he whispered to the empty air. "But you gave us a chance anyway. Thank you. We won't waste it." The sun set. The stars came out. And in the darkness, somewhere far away, humanity continued its watch. Not because they wanted to dominate, not because they sought revenge, but because someone had to remember, someone had to stand guard, someone had to ensure that the next time a species ignored a warning, there would be consequences. Not destruction, not genocide, just consequences. Just the understanding that actions have prices. Just the reminder that mercy, once given, should never be taken for granted. Because humans don't pardon, but they do remember, and that in the end was enough.